He'll call to order the regular meeting of the City Council. Roll call.
We don't have a clerk.
City Manager.
Sorry. I'm here. Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Valdez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman.
Here.
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
All present and accounted for.
We all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, any changes to this evening's agenda? Peggy?
I respectfully request that we remove item 11A and have a study session before we discuss this here. Actually,
Do you
what I'm
want to
wanting
make
is
a motion to
joint-
that effect?
What I'm wanting is a joint study session with the Historic Preservation Board, because of the kinds of questions that I have not heard anything from them, but I'm assuming they may have some thoughts that...
Do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I so move.
Okay, do we have a second? Seeing no second, motion fails. Any other changes or revisions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Approval of the minutes, which we didn't get.
Okay.
So, moving from that, report, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I will, Councilmember Cole, be speaking to the HPB meeting on agenda item 11A. And actually, I wanted to ask Kelly Nardi to come down and talk about a potential award that we may get. And I've just got one other item.
Okay.
Good evening, Council. I just wanted to let you know that two programs, we only submitted two, but the two programs we submitted to the National Association of Telecommunications Officers, both of those programs are in the top 3 finalists, so we're pretty excited about that. One of them I think you're intimately familiar with. It's called I Didn't Know That. Get to Know Your Littleton City Council and Manager, which features all of you. And the other one is a video we did on ice rescue training with the Littleton Fire Department. And it's a really interesting show out at Chatfield. Cut holes in the ice, put people in them, and they all came back. So we're very excited about it. Just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Great.
Congratulations.
And the other thing, I know we had received some complaints from Hudson Gardens, I believe, a week ago, primarily when Hart was playing over there, and I met with Rich Meredith, who's the director of Hudson Gardens, and they are in the process of looking at their sound again, reorienting their speakers, and they're going to have a new sound guy come out and do the analysis of how loud it can be where the sound equipment is versus where the residential is. So, and I know at least for my house, Sunday night was much quieter. So we'll continue to see how that plays out. But he's committed to being a good neighbor, and so appears to be working with us. So just wanted to give you a heads up.
It was good to hear some of that old Hart music, though.
I enjoyed it, but
City Manager, are we still looking at how other cities mitigate that? Botanic Gardens in Denver.
yeah, and Rich and I did talk about that. I shared with him the article on the Denver Botanical Gardens, and he actually knows those folks up there and has gotten some advice from them in the past. So,
Okay. Great, thank you. City Attorney?
I don't have anything.
Okay, Councilmember Cole?
Question for City Manager. Could you clarify for me how we're going to be receiving the budget, the proposed budget? Is it going to be kind of like we have in the past, line item and so forth, the overall and the line item too?
it'll be the full
and
budget
we'll all
book.
get a printed out one
Yeah.
since it's so big?
Yep.
Yay, thank you.
Yay.
The Dr. Cobb meeting is tomorrow evening, so I'll have a report on that on next meeting. The Colorado Municipal League Executive Board had its annual workshop over the past weekend. We had Floyd Cirilli there. Floyd's a nationally known pollster and is called upon by all the national news medias to give his polling that he does. And he does it not only for Colorado, but and other places as well. And he talked about some of the emerging issues that are coming up, particularly the ones that will be coming up nationally with the presidential election and also in the state. He did a PowerPoint on legislation that was done. And it's available on the CML website at www.cml.org. And so if you want to get more of his reports, you can do there. We had reports on legislation. We had reports on finances. We had reports on membership services. Update on the establishment of a lease purchase program that's going to be started by CML. We set the goals for next year as well as started working on our 3 to 5 year strategic plan. And Cindy Garrett from, I don't remember what organization she's from, but she coordinated moderated the workshop. And we had a very nice presentation from the City of Evans on some of their innovative programs. So it was a good weekend.
Great. Bruce?
Not a report, maybe so much as a mea culpa. I had sort of an interesting experience yesterday. I had a citizen ask me or make an inquiry about the current status of the senior property tax exemption. Told the individual I knew it was a county-related issue, wasn't entirely sure what the status was, so went and checked. And the county website wasn't particularly substantive, so I ended up calling the assessor's office, found out that, in fact, the senior property tax exemption is active this year for 2012 property taxes payable in 2013, but there was an application filing deadline that was midnight yesterday. Now, I passed this information along, and the individual involved was able to get over to the county and get signed up, so I think they're covered. But I also took the further step of getting some of the folks who have large e-distribution lists around town, the Paul Binghams and those Tom Mulvey and so forth and so on, and said, hey, if you guys want to, run this out on an e-blast real quick just to let people know, that's terrific, because I didn't realize there was an application that was required. Subsequently, there were some comments to the effect that people thought they may have applied previously and that was a carryover status, that if they had applied for the senior property tax exemption a few years ago when it was active, it would continue in force. And I believe that's an accurate statement. As I said, the county website wasn't particularly helpful. I think they also missed an opportunity to perhaps communicate more broadly. But I wanted to pass along the assessor's office. If anybody has any questions concerning their eligibility or whether they had previously applied, again, we think if you previously applied, you should be fine for getting it. But if you have a question, the county assessor's phone number is 303-795-4600. That's 795-4600. They would be the go-to people in terms of making a definitive inquiry. And I talked to Communications Director Nardi to see if we could keep an eye on this thing in the future, maybe put it on our website, and certainly the newspapers and so forth have an opportunity to communicate this, because I just didn't get any sense that there was much publicity about this topic prior to the quote-unquote deadline. So that's all I've got.
Okay. Jerry?
Cool. A couple hours ago, I received a phone call from one of my neighbors that had mentioned Steve Kelly, which a lot of people know Steve Kelly. He's on the radio and has done a lot of things to help a lot of people. But what I learned is that he's helping one of our other neighbors who's disabled and mentally disabled, and he's having some issues, and Steve has come to help him out. Not that Steve's going to be able to help him get out of the situation this individual's in, but I think it's wonderful to have citizens and people like Steve Kelly to step forward and help out people who really have trouble understanding things, and just kudos to Steve. Cool, that's it.
Phil?
Very good. Reminder that I'm having a District 3 Town Hall meeting this Saturday morning at 10. The city manager, as well as a board member from South Suburban, will be present, and we'll cover all of the areas where folks are looking for input from citizens, be it the South Bend Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce through their BRE interviews with businesses, the citizen survey that is being contemplated by the South Suburban Park and Rec District Board, as well as the Dr. Cog Metro Vision and the scenario planning that's occurring there, as well as being aware of the Inspire Littleton effort that is going on. So have a chance to join us. Coffee and pastry will be available. It'll be at the South Metro Denver Realtor Association building on basically the northeast corner of Broadway and Mineral. Attended the South Suburban Park and Rec District Board meeting last week. During their study session, parallel discussion with regard the Chatfield reallocation impacts, and that occurred, and its impact, of course, on the South Platte Park River that is actually downstream from the storage facility. Also, Mims Buck, who is the wife of Douglas Buck for our Recreation and Senior Center, passed away. Memorial service is coming up on July 28th. It will be held at the center. She was actually 102 years old. Of course, shared with the South Suburban Park and Rec District Board the invitation to the city's Economic Development Symposium at the library next Tuesday. And that means we might actually have a Tuesday evening that's not being televised. So if folks are preparing their popcorn, they might want to have to show up, so as far as that's concerned. So the Dr. Cog hosted a Mile High concept session on planning for all people. That was last Thursday. I'm preparing my notes. It had to do with transit use and transit development. And there is a Metro Vision idea exchange, which is sharing coming up in August. It's a presentation. I've sent the information to the mayor and the city manager. Hopefully it'll get around to everyone about how some of the North Metro suburbs have been handling redevelopment. A couple of them will be sharing their stories in that, given the other stories that we're also having a chance to hear. And the MetroVision Citizen Survey can actually be accessed through the Dr. Cobb website. Thank you.
Bruce?
A couple things. First of all, since our last council meeting, we had the 4th of July, and I want to thank all the community for really taking to heart that ban on fireworks. It was very quiet around the city, and there were no issues for the police department or the fire department to deal with. So thank you for listening and caring about that issue. It was very important. Phil mentioned the Chatfield reallocation study. For those who may not be familiar with what is happening, Chatfield was originally designed to handle a certain amount of water, but they did not fill it to the full amount, up to the brim of the walls of the reservoir and the dam. And now they've made a decision that perhaps it's the proper thing to do to raise the water level another 12 feet, which the dam and reservoir was originally designed for. But of course, if you go down to Chatfield and you're one of the folks in our community who enjoy all the amenities of Chatfield as a recreation spot, that 12 feet then has some real impacts on what it is that you go down and do. So the study is being done by the Corps of Engineers. They recognize that there's a lot of things that will happen inside there that will have to be dealt with in order to keep it the #1 state park in Colorado, actually. But where it affects us and where we're concerned in Littleton, of course, is the river. The river is very important to us as a community, and we don't know all the impacts that may occur for that river. And if you've been down there in the last several weeks, since the drought particularly, you'll know that when it's low, it is a very serious issue for us. So we hope that the outcomes there will be more water in the reservoir, more opportunity to keep the flow steady and to do those things. But we also know that for the period of time that there's construction, there could be other impacts. And the environmental impact statement, which is over 500 pages, doesn't mention downstream mitigation. So we're very concerned with that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Taylor?
Yes, I did forget to mention that this coming Friday and Saturday night, from 5 to 11 in downtown Littleton. We'll have the second annual turkey leg and wine hoedown. It'll be fun and games going on the Rinky Brothers parking lot, and everybody's welcome to come down. There is an admission charge, but there's also lots of fun things to do when you get inside, like frozen turkey bowling, floating down a river, catching crawdads, things like this. So it'll be this coming Saturday and Friday and Saturday from 5 to 11.
Thank you. One item I wanted to make note of is that next Tuesday, July 24th, 6 to 9, we'll be holding our Economic Development Symposium, and this is quite an honor for us to be able to do this. Our featured speaker will be Denver Mayor Michael Hancock. In addition to Mayor Hancock, we have Tom Clark, CEO of Metro Denver Economic Development Corp. and Executive VP of the Denver Metro Chamber, Dr. Phyllis Resnick, who is a lead economist with the Center for Colorado's Economic Future and economist for Dr. Cog. And we also have Paul Washington, who is the City and County of Denver Economic Development Director. So it promises to be a great evening. We have invited city leaders from 6 of our neighboring municipalities and are getting RSVPs from all of them. We've also invited top leaders in business and industry within the South Metro area and specifically Littleton. So it'll be at the museum and in the Friends Lecture Hall. And again, it'll be next Tuesday. It starts at 6. Mayor Hancock will speak first because he needs to leave early. So if you get there late, you may miss him. He'll speak from 6 to 7. So I think it'd be very, very educational opportunity if you're interested in economic development. We do have on the back podium or back stand, we do have the resumes and list of credits for all 4 of the speakers if you're interested. Okay. Let me get back to the agenda. Okay. Guest appearances. This evening, we have some guest citizens, Littleton Public Schools, 2012 valedictorians, salutatorians, and Betcher Scholar. And I've asked the council members, each one, to take a name and read the credits to that particular individual. So as your name is read, if you don't mind, step on down. We have a gift for you and a certificate from the city also to go along with your pounds of credits and honors. So, Councilmember Beckman.
Okay, our first one is from Littleton High School. Chip Ballendonk is Littleton Public Schools' only Betcher Scholar. Chip is a natural-born leader and served on the student body president and is a 2-time national officer for the Technology Student Association. He was on the track and cross-country teams, the National Honor Society, and in the IB program. He should look familiar as he was the student ambassador for the Littleton Sister City Exchange Program and traveled to Bega, Australia with the delegation last year. Chip is an aspiring actor and played Nathan Detroit in Guys and Dolls and Seymour in The Little Shop of Horrors. Chip works at Boulder Running Company and will use his Betcher Scholarship at the University of Colorado, where he will major in engineering.
Also from Littleton High School. Also from Littleton High School, Trey Pittman, who is the valedictorian, as well as Joseph Fuchs was the salutatorian. And Joseph will attend Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My father-in-law happens to be a cheesehead, so where he will be studying engineering with plans to go to medical school. He graduated with a 4.726 GPA. He was vice president of the National Honor Society, secretary of the Technology Student Association, and he played varsity golf, where he lettered twice. He enjoys tennis and running half marathons. He has volunteered for Habitat for Humanity, helping to build 9 housing units. He also has his own lawn mowing business, and Joseph's twin brother, Jeff, will also attend Marquette University and also plans on a career in biomedicine.
Heritage High School, Shelley Patton. Shelley Patton was the valedictorian, Graduating with a 4.44 GPA, she will attend Northwestern University, where she earned a swimming scholarship. She will major in biology with an emphasis in neurology and may pursue a career in medicine. Shelley won the state championship in the 100-meter breaststroke and was named the Outstanding Girls Athlete at Heritage. She was the first chair viola player. She was selected all 4 years to the Centennial League Orchestra. She received the National School Orchestra Award. She is a member of the National Honor Society and won the John Lynch Star of the Year Award. She has coached the Franklin Fish Swim Team and volunteered for Habitat for Humanity and the Rocky Mountain Cancer Center. Shelley Patton.
Also from Heritage High School, Bennett McIntosh was the salutatorian. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight, but his passions include chess tournaments, spelling and geography bees, the Brain Bowl, and math competitions. He was captain of the speech and debate team and participated in the Rotary's World Affairs Seminar as well as the American Legion's Boys State. His hobbies include reading science fiction and memorizing list songs, including Tom Lehrer's The Elements song.
All right.
From Arapahoe High School, Paul Frederick was a valedictorian, but he's out of town tonight. But Anish Punjabi was a salutatorian. He graduated with a 4.38 GPA. He will attend the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he will major in mechanical engineering with plans to attend medical school. He enjoys working with people, but wants to have a firm grasp on the technical aspects of medicine. He was a class president for 3 years and was student body president his senior year. He was in the concert choir for 3 years and the Arapahoe Singers his senior year. Anish was on the cross-country team for 2 years, where he lettered, and the soccer team for 1 year. He volunteers at Littleton Hospital and is doing research on pulmonary issues in premature babies at the University of Colorado Philip Anschutz campus. He met President Obama in Washington, D.C. when he was selected as a U.S. Senator to the American Legion Boys Nation. The Littleton City Council congratulates these amazing young men and women, their families, and their teachers, and for their incredible successes, and looks forward to hearing more about the remarkable things they will accomplish in the future.
Congratulations, guys.
Great job.
Congratulations.
Well done.
I can't believe that, Chip. You always have something to say. We hope so.
And can we point out all the families and the students? All of this is broadcast live right now. It will be available on the rebroadcast, but it's forever, apparently, also going to be available, as all our programs are, on the city website. So wherever you have friends, Chip, even in the southern part of the globe, they can tune in and see you anytime you want. Probably, within about 5 days or so, it'll get posted. Is that right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next item on our agenda is 7A, City Attorney. Oh, excuse me. Let me go back.
Right.
To unscheduled public appearances. Didn't mean to cut that out. So next item will be unscheduled public appearances. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to address council on any issue unrelated to any of the public hearings this evening, please come down and do so. Norm? And please state your name and address.
Get that arranged. Norm Brown, 6081 South Spotswood Street. And under consent item B, that's the project along Stern Parkway. Spotswood is very close, and as is Stern Park and Stern Lake. I had about a minute or 30 seconds to talk to Mr. Bloston about the end of the project, dredging Stern Lake. As you recall, it didn't wrap up exactly as had been planned. He said, he indicated to me there wasn't the problem that they thought might occur because they didn't get to finish the dredging. And of course, draining the lake and starting again with a new permit to finish that would be costly and probably doesn't need to be done at this time. However, there was some communication at that time that said, well, if you want us, somebody, one of the other partners said, if you want us to come back and finish that, we will. Probably not the best choice. But this section of the project with one of the same partners has a $50,000 contingency fee. I would suggest maybe it would be good to start looking at funding to dredge that again sometime in the future. There was a little bit of a scramble this year to get that in place. I suppose you could take that contingency if it's not needed and start what might be called the water fund. Might want a different name. One other item. I believe Stern Parkway is on the crabapple route, and there's a lot of crabapple trees there. This is to fund the design and ultimately the project. I don't believe the design is even started yet, but I would like, well, first let me say the section that was done in phase 1 was good. I think that's an improvement. I happen to like the crabapple trees. I think the mayor and I disagree about crabapples, but I hope that they're preserved or replanted or something as part of the design. I'd like to see that occur. It's one of the features of Littleton that I think is compelling, particularly in the springtime. And the robins in the dead of winter, January and February, I thought they all used to migrate, but I see them in the trees there getting the crab apples that are still clinging and so on and so forth. So it's not just aesthetic, it's also nice for the wildlife. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Anyone else? Pam?
Hi, my name is Pam Chadbourne. I live at 5402 South Nevada Street. Last meeting, I want to apologize for expressing some feelings rather than telling you about my feelings and why I feel them. Let me just try to correct that a little bit tonight. My feelings are some concern about the future of Littleton. And I also have a personal interest in downtown Littleton, but my primary concern is about the future of Littleton. In my work life, I have experience providing information to decision makers, and I'm concerned about our decision-making process. So that's where some of my passion comes from. And I just want to note that I learned a lot of this decades ago when Martin Marietta was still called Martin Marietta from Tom Huff and Ed Tully, I think his name was. So just want to acknowledge that. It's a long time ago, but I think they had good lessons. So I wanted to illustrate this by asking some questions. First, I'll say, though, that I think we share an assumption that Littleton is in an enviable position as a satellite of Denver. And we can be great. We can also kind of mess up. And I don't mean that by what we're doing now. I mean that because you can look around the nation and see good and bad outcomes of satellites around major metropolitan areas. So my feelings come from a difference in expectations. And I think that when a change is proposed, there has to be a specific rationale given and very complete rationale and well-founded. And then impacts of the change should be defined. And it takes time and money to have staff to do that, and it requires a learning curve. But it's worth doing because it allows open review of the data. It allows changing the data until it's complete and as correct as possible. And it brings expertise from all elements into the decision process. So let me say regarding the TIS appeal, one thing I would have liked to have seen was a process flow chart. And I happen to have in paper that I've got February 2010 flow charts. Those flowcharts, or some version of them, could have been presented as part of the TIS repeal to show what we have now and what the change would have resulted in. And I have to tell you, that's part of what excited me last week, was to hear that a public comment step would be omitted. Where's our definition of that? How do we see that? How do we know that the proposed change is going to fix the claimed problem? That you can't see that without a flowchart either. So that's something I would have liked to have seen. Let me suggest that that's part of the data package that should come when a change is proposed. I'm also curious why developers don't have to come down here when they first come to present a project to the city and stand before you like I am and just show us all in public their proposal. I think that'd be a good idea. And I'd like to see the process include an opportunity for citizens to be informed about the details and to ask questions of the developers face to face. I'm also curious why we're not waiting for the comprehensive plan before we take these decisions with wide impact. You know, a couple that I'm concerned about are the lighting ordinance repeal last year and the repeal of the TIS now. And my last question is, what is the comp plan process? I went to a meeting, and although some data was presented, what is the big process that we're engaged in here, and what are our opportunities as citizens to be informed about what's happening, and then to evaluate and discuss, and then to have input about the comp plan process? So thanks for hearing me out. Hopefully I'm a little calmer tonight, so thanks very much.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else? Yes. Extra credit if you stay. They have 4.5. Yeah.
My name is John Buck, and my address is 5700 South Huron Street. South Huron.
Huron, okay.
Huron. On a little lighter note, I just wanted to, I represent or lead a group of pastors in the area who are looking to help out in Littleton. And we just had a question on what is the biggest need that you see in Littleton, and how maybe some steps on how we can help that as a gathering of churches to do that. You probably can't answer that right now. I just wanted to put that out there. And
our city manager will get in contact with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Would you leave him your contact information? And we are also having, I think it's in October, we're having a breakfast with entities within the community that are charitable and serve the different levels of need in the community. So we'll make sure that we have your contact information for that too.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
If I may just, Michael, I don't know, I'm sure you know, but I had gotten Kay Wilmisher to sit down with one of the churches, and she's got a wealth of information on this stuff.
That's who I'm sending him.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Something's coming up in August for you that you can do.
Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move to consent agenda. Item 7A, City Attorney.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton approving Aspen Grove's Business Improvement District's petition to approve a new board member.
Okay, the City Council established the Aspen Grove Business Improvement District in 2000. This bid is governed by a 5-member board of directors that's appointed by the City Council. Recently, a longtime board member, Richard Zubovich, resigned for personal reasons, and so the bid board has nominated Christopher Dykstra to serve. Mr. Dykstra is the Director of Project Management for the Western Region of DDR Corp. He is eligible to serve on the bid board by reason of being the designated elector of DDR Corp., the leasing of taxable real property located within the bid boundaries. 7B, did you want to pull that?
I do.
Okay, it's being pulled. 7B, Kirsten.
This is a resolution of the City of Littleton authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Littleton and the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District regarding Littles Creek storm drainage improvements.
In 2007, Littleton entered into a IGA intergovernmental agreement with Urban Drainage and Flood Control for design and construction of storm drainage and flood control improvements along Littles Creek. The preliminary design was completed in 2009, and Council authorized amendments to the IGA in 2009 and 2010 to fund construction of the first phase. This resolution is to fund the final design and construction of Phase 2 improvements on Stern Ditch from Westlake Avenue to South Windermere. Also included in this proposal work is new storm sewer along Western Parkway and along with sanitary sewer and other utility relocations resulting from the drainage work. The cost, 56% will be borne by the city, $285,000. 44% will be borne by urban drainage, which is $225,000. Total cost, $510,000. Our share will be funded by the storm drainage fund. Bruce, do you want to poll it?
I actually don't want to poll it, but I did ask because it wasn't in the memo. There's $652,000 in the storm drainage fund at the end of December last year, and this has all been budgeted. So that was just a piece of interesting information to share.
Okay. Are we okay? Okay, need a motion?
I'll move for the approval of consent agenda B.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, 7A. Jerry?
Just a couple questions only. On this particular board, I was kind of wondering, well, first of all, staff is recommending, staff recommends the approval. I was just kind of wondering who staff is in this particular case.
My name is on it. I do have Tim Flynn, the attorney who represents the bid here, if you have any specific questions, but I'm told that the only business left is to certify the debt service, and that it's a statutory requirement that they petition with their recommendation of who should fill the vacancy. And so this particular appointment serves at your pleasure, and if you have specific questions about the board, I think Mr. Flynn would be happy to answer them for you.
But you're the staff we're talking about here. That's my question, because often I read these things that says staff, but when it discussed in here, some of the requirements, I started wondering, well, does staff know what the requirements are? Because I don't.
I guess, yes, that would be, my recommendation would be to approve it. So
yeah.
I am the staff in this.
That's fine, and I'm fine with that. The other part I have is this, why are we treating this board different in that we don't do interviews and we're just taking the recommendation of the board itself?
Well, this is different than your advisory boards, which are set up through your powers and authority per the charter, and this is a statutory requirement. So it's set forth in Title 31 of the Colorado statutes.
And it's great that he meets the requirements. And what are the requirements?
Mr. Flynn, do you want to address that?
Hi, Tim.
Hello, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Tim Flynn from the firm of Collins, Cockrell & Cole, General Counsel for the bid. In order to be on the bid board of directors, you have to be an eligible elector of the bid, which basically means you have to be the owner of taxable real or personal property or the lessee of taxable real or personal property located within the bid's boundaries. This bid was formed, like the mayor said, back in 2000 for the purpose of financing the public infrastructure that serves the Aspen Grove Lifestyle Center. At that time, we issued $9,100,000 in general obligation bonds to construct some of the roadway improvements that are on the perimeter there within the Aspen Grove Lifestyle Center, the water, the sewer, other public common areas in there were financed by the bid. Its primary purpose was to finance public improvements. So now that that debt has been in place, really the sole purpose of this bid is to meet basically once a year, sometimes we try to meet a little more than that, to certify the property tax mill levy that is needed in order to make the debt service payments on those bonds that are outstanding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bruce?
Just, well, because you're here, we don't have to Do we certify anything else like the budget? I know we've got other bids
Yes,
where we do certify the budget.
Yeah, the bid, there's two things that the city council does. When we formed this bid, there's three options for the governing body of a bid. One is that you actually have an elected bid, and every 2 years you go through in a general election. The other is that city council appoints the board members, and they serve at the pleasure of city council. There's no specific term. The third is that the city council itself sit as the governing body of the bid. The bid is a quasi-municipal corporation, an independent political subdivision, really, of the state of Colorado. And at the time we formed it, the city council did not want to sit as the governing body of the bid because it was primarily formed to just finance the public infrastructure that's down there that serves Aspen Grove.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Motion whenever
Okay,
you're ready.
need a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that the resolution approving the Aspen Grove Business Improvement District petition for appointment of a new board member be approved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Item 9A. City Attorney?
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton authorizing the city to agree to the compliance order issued by the Colorado Water Quality Control Division regarding the Littleton Englewood wastewater treatment plant.
This,
And if it helps you at all, we have Jennifer Hunt from Hill & Robbins who's prepared to address this and make a
Any
presentation.
questions?
It might be
Okay.
helpful.
just a brief summary. The Water Quality Control Division conducted a compliance and capacity assessment of our sewer treatment facility, as well as many of the connector districts in the Englewood-Littleton service areas in the summer of 2010. The assessment was followed by a compliance advisory from the division, which made allegations regarding compliance with the Colorado Water Quality Control Act. All but one of those allegations was refuted by legal counsel. To resolve the allegations, a compliance order has been developed that includes an administrative penalty, actions to be taken by the sewer treatment facility, and identifies supplemental environmental projects to completely offset the penalty. The supplemental environment projects are public trail improvements identified by the Englewood Parks and Recreation Department and the Littleton Public Works Department, and there will be one project in each city. The fiscal impacts, the administrative penalty is $105,150 to be evenly split between Littleton and Englewood. And do we want to make a motion?
I move to approve the resolution authorizing the city to agree to the compliance order of consent issued by the Colorado Water Quality Division regarding the Littleton Englewood wastewater treatment plant.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Bruce?
I'm not sure who I want to address this question to, but I understand that this occurred back in 2010, and I'm impressed that the penalty will be something that is beneficial to the community in its outcome, but I am concerned when I see that it's $105,000 that is an administrative penalty levied. So I have two questions. One, is this money, it says split evenly between the two cities, Littleton and Englewood. Well, is that tax money that is from each of the residents within that city, or is it money from the ratepayers, totality of the district that we serve? And then the second part of that question would be, and I assume that whatever action is necessary to make sure that this doesn't happen again has been done. So
We're going to invite Jennifer Hunt up. If you would come to the podium, please.
hi, Jennifer.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Hunt, as she said, with the law firm of Hill & Robbins, and I believe you all have probably met my partner, David Robbins, in the past, and we're special counsel for the Littleton Englewood wastewater treatment plant. To try to answer your question, I believe that the money for these projects is going to come out of the plant's budget. So that is where that comes from. That is the extent to which I think I can answer that question. But it does come out of the plant's budget, and it doesn't get paid. The purpose of these supplemental environmental projects is that the money is not a penalty that gets paid to the state. Instead, it goes back to the communities to do the trail projects. So And I forget the second part.
Well, the second part would be whatever it was that was done that resulted in this administrative ruling, I would hope that corrective actions have been taken.
Yes, the plant staff has worked very hard to do that. Just for a little background context, these violations, or the alleged violations, which were largely disputed by staff and by us, were technical violations of the sort that in the past would not have been triggered any enforcement action. But there was some change in how things were done, and the state decided they needed to come in and clean up, all past violations. Almost all of the violations occurred during a construction phase at the plant. And so since the time, I think the latest one that is dealt with in here is February 2011. And since that time, there have not been any additional spills. So the issues any issues that were present have been dealt with.
Thank you.
Peggy?
Yeah, so 2011, but I thought this is saying 2010?
Actually, the assessment was done in 2010, but the compliance order covers 2006, I think, August 2006, all the way through February 2011. And all of the alleged events that are listed in the compliance order then are dealt with. There can be once this is signed and entered into, there can be no further enforcement action on all of the alleged events that are in the compliance order.
And I have actually 3 questions, 2 related, so we got that part. But can you give us some idea of the kind of alleged violations that we successfully refuted, and then which one didn't we successfully refute?
Well, we did. This represents a settlement. The state and the plant disagreed on whether these things were actual violations.
But one wasn't, right?
I believe there was one, and I have to admit I don't have all the detail on the details of the violations. I do know that the largest one was around 250,000 gallons that resulted from, there's apparently a large gate and a very big pipe, and the bolt broke. So the gate couldn't be closed. So that was the nature of the very large one. All of the others, I believe, almost all the others, were very small amounts that either went onto the ground very far from any groundwater source and were then cleaned up before they could get anywhere, or were on pavement and again were cleaned up before they could reach the waters of the state. And we disputed that those actually were violations because no pollutants reached the waters of the state. But those were the kinds of violations we're talking about.
Okay. And, council frequently hears about these. Well, not frequently. When they occur, right. I remember hearing about some in the past few years. So, but the next question, you might not be the one to answer. I'm wondering what the project is that's going to be done in Littleton.
I can answer generally, and I don't know if you have the actual compliance order in front of you, but the project is the City Ditch Bicycle Trail, and it will provide public access, pedestrian and bicycle, along the historic city ditch through the central part of Littleton.
Is this just bicycles or pedestrians and joggers and so forth?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
I mean, it is described in detail there's a summary in the compliance order on consent itself that explains it in detail.
Well, some of this we've had wind of on council, but public doesn't know this, and so it's for the public record I was asking for that. So thank you.
Okay.
Phil?
Jennifer, mine's probably more in the context of making sure I understand, so it's a yes or no. Essentially, we could dispute this for a longer period of time. Typically, the types of compliance orders that I've seen in different industries are ones where you're tired of arguing, you're probably not going to get to a point, and in order to save face, there's something put in place that says, hey, we're going to do something good that we might be already going to be doing anyway, and we're going to apply some funds towards it, it either goes in areas of education or parks or trails or something like that that goes into the community. My understanding is it was accidental, so there's really no piece of guilt in that's being admitted in this, and this is just a way to kind of close the book, get it behind us, and move on, so we're not paying attorneys anymore to spend some time arguing this.
That is a correct assessment. I think that we believed that this was, our recommendation is to enter into this because it does provide benefit to the community without spending a lot more money contesting this and going through and paying lawyers and engineers.
And I believe Inglewood approved it last night.
They have a two-step process.
Oh, that's right.
So they decided last night to put it on, to take it up at their next formal meeting. So they'll be taking it up then.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. We have a motion, and it's been seconded. Ready to vote?
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, 11A.
This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending the Historic Preservation Code, Title 4, Chapter 6.
City Council, the Historic Preservation Board, and city staff requested amendments to the Historic Preservation Code in order to address issues that have hindered the administration of historic preservation and to better meet Council's adopted goals and objectives. Council reviewed the proposed code amendments on January 24th and March 27th of this year, and based on the direction from those meetings, staff has prepared the current set of amendments. It's my understanding these were approved unanimously by the Historic Preservation Board in their meeting last night. And City Manager, do you want to make a brief presentation on this?
Yes, I would. Myself and the city attorney will tag team on this one. I basically wanted to let the council know, because they did go to HPB last night, what occurred then, and talked specifically about Section 4, which is on page 4 of 16, and then the city attorney can answer some of the other code amendment changes. But this was presented originally to the HPB board at their June meeting. They had an opportunity to review it, but wanted some additional time, so they carried it over to their July meeting. And we discussed it probably for about 20 minutes last night. There were some good questions. There was no code amendment changes recommended. It was 7-0 vote. The board, I thought, did a good job of discussion and, again, inquiry and just making sure that they fully understood it and the implications of it. The board ended with a variety of the board members saying that they thought it was things like very thoughtful code amendments, comprehensive work. So it comes not just with a 7-0, but I think very much appreciated by the HPB board as well. So one of the issues on that page 4, as I believe council was aware, was the initial proposal had struck out what is on page 4, lines 14 and 15, develop and assist in public education programs, including but not limited to walking tours, brochures, a marker program for historic properties, lectures, and conferences. In the revised revision that we gave to them, we put that paragraph back in minus the first two words, develop and that was a recommendation that also came out of the Board and Commission's task force. I should note that I went through the Board and Commission's recommendations and Council's discussion. They had a few questions for that, but again, I think they very much appreciated the work of that task force, and they're actually looking forward to when they have their recommendations on that Council directed them to work on, and they're thinking about 3 months they'll be prepared to come back in a joint study session. So they understood the liaison component and evenness of information, so there's very much appreciation for that. But I think putting that back in and having that level of advocacy very much took care of the vast majority of their concerns. They wanted to know that they could still participate in that, and they felt that the language was broad enough that the things that they discussed could be incorporated within that. So,
since some of us have it in one form and some another or two forms, would you say again exactly where you were?
I am on the electronic version. It's section 4, which on page 4. It's
It's section 4-6-4.
Yeah, it's the powers and duties lines 15 and 16. I apologize. I'm probably looking at, yes, a printed version of it.
Bruce?
I just have a question about process. The version that we're looking at, which is the changed ordinance, has strikeouts and additions. When this is codified, will the strikeouts and additions be included in the actual, are we looking at, we are not, are
Nope, the codifier will take out the strikeouts. There'll be no caps, and it'll look just like our municipal code does when you go online. The codifier will also clean up any of the renumbering, so you don't need to pay attention to that sort of minutia.
Thank you.
Along those same lines, whenever we come back for second reading, it would be most helpful if we had the original ordinance that was passed with the strikeouts and capitals put in it in the correct place so that you can get a complete idea of what's happening from beginning to the end in this. When you start looking at what we're doing tonight, we're piecemealing and making strikeouts and additions to parts of sections of which we do not know what the rest of the section is.
So we actually discussed this at HPB last night because what we are presenting, what's being presented to you, are the code amendments that we're changing. They did discuss other components of the code, but this is what they were recommending that you change. We can give it all to you if you want, but what's presented is the code amendments. If it's not in here, they're not recommending any changes to.
Understand that, but trying to understand what's happening.
Yeah,
Whenever
we
you
can
insert a line in there someplace in some section that has no meaning when it's in here, but it may have a lot of meaning whenever it's in the context of the original ordinance.
Okay, we can provide it.
But, and sort of piggyback on that, it's looking from this to the actual current code and trying to remember what the context is around it. It's just, there's so much here and so much to go back and forth with. But we don't have a motion yet, do we?
No, we have council questions at this point. This is going to be a first reading public hearing. So any more questions, council? Bruce?
Yeah, I've got, you want to?
Go ahead.
Three questions. On the first, well, in the definitions on the first page and the second page. First page, we've got contributing property, and then on the second page, line 30, we've got non-contributing property. I understand the definitions. My further understanding was the reason we were inserting those definitions had to do with differing application of the level of design guidelines, but I wasn't able to locate that in the text. Can you direct me to where in the rest of the text we're seeing which design guidelines apply to which property?
It's in there. I don't know if I can pull it really quickly, but the contributing properties are going to be pursuant to the historic preservation guidelines, and the non-contributing will just follow the downtown guidelines. And the contributing properties are referenced in here, and as well as the historic preservation guidelines, but then the other section is in the planning and zoning part of our city code.
Okay, well, I saw a number of references to design guidelines, but I don't recall, and I tried looking for it. I didn't see the historic preservation guidelines, so I'll just throw that out. You may want to just...
We can bring it at least back at second reading if that's okay with you.
I'm totally fine with that. I just want to make sure you guys, if it's in there and I'm not seeing it, that's great, but I just want to make sure it was called out. The second question, let me see here. I guess sort of taking that a step further, when it talks about conformance, in conformance with any applicable adopted design guidelines, part of the subsequent process here is to address the downtown design guidelines themselves, and that process is still sort of in process, right?
HPB has made a recommendation, and it's sitting before the Planning Commission, and so when our planning director returns. Actually, one of their requests last night was to move that forward because there was a level of frustration that it has been simmering for a while. But it is out of HPB. They've made their revisions, and they want to see those implemented. So if we can get it through the Planning Commission, my hope is that we can bring it to the full council before too long.
Okay, perfect. Final question I have is on page 16, basically lines 1 through 5. What this says is essentially council shall hold public hearings to consider an appeal limited to whether the board abused discretion. And I understand that's a judicial, well, it strikes me as obviously a judicial, we're being asked to make a judicial finding of did you do your job, not whether we agree with the job you did.
Well, the way it was written before is it was a brand new hearing, so you can, and it was wide open as to what evidence you could consider. So you didn't even have to consider the sort of evidence that HPB considered. I have no idea why it was written like that. It was not a good idea, and so now we've narrowed it, and it really follows what is commonly referred to in the legal world as Rule 106, which is you're just looking at what they did and say, did they act reasonably based on the evidence in the record?
Well, and I sort of get that, but I guess given in a court level, I get the 106 process because we've had experience with that, but I'm a little curious. I mean, we have broader discretion as council to consider things beyond just whether a board or a commission did their job as prescribed by the boards and commissions handbook, if I understand things correctly. Is that inappropriate?
Not in this particular situation, because this is a quasi-judicial hearing that has criteria that they have to follow. So when you look at the record on appeal, you're going to just say, did they apply A, B, C, D criteria?
Okay, that's not, if we do this with planning commission or zoning overlay, we don't necessarily have to affirm or disaffirm a planning commission decision, do we? I mean, we have the if we hear evidence on a quasi-judicial basis, we have the right to make a decision as council, do we not?
You could do the same thing in this sort of situation, such as remand it back to them and ask them to consider something they didn't consider. So in that way, it's the same thing. It's affirm, not affirm, or you could send it back to them.
Okay. All right. I would just say as an aside, I want to commend staff as well as the Historic Preservation Board. I know this has been a subject of contention and debate and consideration for a number of years, and I really think this is a good piece of work. I know we have a few questions and so forth, but from your guys' standpoint as well as Historic Preservation Board, it's a lot of effort went into this, and I respect that.
Jim?
I think that we need to have a definition of landmark property as part of our definition section. And then we've got demolition. And then we have partial demolition. Then we've got total demolition. Why can't all of that just go under demolition? If I'm going to have a property I want to totally demolish or partially demolish, I would look under demolish, not under partial or not under total. So I would think that having that combined into a single definition would be much more helpful for the people who'd be using this.
That was a specific recommendation of Historic Preservation Board. They wanted that in there. I don't know if you have, did they discuss that at all last night?
They did not.
Well, if they put it, if it's going to stay in there, then I think there needs to be a reference made that there are two other definitions for demolish.
See also. Right? See also.
Say what?
See also. So that if you're in one definition, you say see also, whichever related ones.
Okay, that's
or
easy.
Or put it all under one.
Okay.
Yeah, having heard some discussion around this, the distinction between demolition and partial demolition is, and this would be asking them for their clarification around the understanding of this, is they don't want demolition to be thought of as only total demolition, so that you can kind of, get under the wire, so to speak, in doing a partial demolition, which might be fairly substantial.
But if you were an owner who wanted to demolish something, Would you look under total if you wanted to demolish it? You'd look under demolish.
We can clean this one up.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, page 4, I'm glad to hear Kirsten say that that numbering system is going to get straightened out because it's really fouled up on that page. Page 5, line number 33. This is a determination of the period of significance for the proposed historic district. Shouldn't that be historic landmark? Because it continues on talking about the proposed historic district in the next line.
I think
Check that and see if that should not be landmark instead of district in line 33.
Okay.
Anything else, Jim?
Yeah. I've
Okay,
got
sorry.
more. Page 6. Under line 3, I would think historic district, Main Street Historic District should all be in caps, but that may be caught by the codifier. And then, starting with line 6, it's something I would like to see changed. It talks about grants that the city is going to be, or the Historic Preservation Board is going to be giving. And it is giving grants outside of the district, considerably outside of the district, as it is defined in this current ordinance. And I'd like to see that tightened up so that it is going to be just within the district boundaries itself. And I'll come back to district boundaries as my last item I want to talk about when I'm talking today.
Mayor, may I respond on?
Yes.
So as part of incentives and the boundary, you'll recall that the council directed the HPB to look at both of those, and those are on their work plan. And so I believe that for you, Councilman Taylor, those are going to be some of what they're going to be coming back to you with recommendations on potential code amendments and changes. And the approximate time that was given to me was about 3 months.
Just make sure this one gets flagged then.
Yeah, no, both of these, part of the other agenda item last night was going over their work plan, and both the incentives and the district boundaries are on their work plan, and I believe they're both high priorities.
Continuing on page 6, line number 13, owners of properties within the Main Street Historic District. I think that needs to say owners of opt-in properties are entitled to exemptions. Not all properties are entitled to exemptions. Not all properties are entitled to the grants. Only those that are opt-in. And so I think that needs to be clarified.
Okay, we'll clarify that on second reading.
And down on line 27, starting at 27, clear through line 35. Paren A and number 1. The only differences between those two paragraphs is Paren A starts out when required. And number 1 says obtained from the board and ends the sentence with 4. And that's the only difference between A and 1. So we might need to take a look at clarifying what those are going to be or make them one and the same.
Okay, I've got a note of that as well.
I do have another one. I just got to get to it. Page 16. Councilman Stallman talked a little bit about this on the public hearing proposals, and he said that the appeal can be made to City Council, and the decision of City Council shall be final, a final order subject to appeal. I think we should say appeal to whom? Is it county court, district court, state court, whatever court it's going to be?
We have the general appeal provision, so I will reference that in here. In our city code, all boards get appealed to district court, so I'll reference that section in here.
Okay. And then the last one I want to talk about is Section 3, which is on page 2. Excuse me. It's on page 3, Section 3 on page 3. And I just heard Michael say that this is one of the things they're going to be talking about, but I certainly would urge that they look at designating a Main Street historic boundary that is larger than just Main Street, and then you subset inside that boundary the ability to opt in. And the ability to opt in then gives you the ability to get grants, the ability to get exemptions. It will give you the opt-in properties, the protections that they were expecting to get. And I guess if necessary, I'll go to argue with the Historic Preservation Board at the current time.
You'll have an opportunity when you have your joint study session.
Okay. But that's just another one that I think needs some changes.
Anyone else? Bruce?
I just have a question, Councilman Taylor, just back to page 6 at the top, when you talked about the boundaries. Could you clarify for me? I understand we have the Main Street historical area, and then we have this extended area that's described in here. Can you just differentiate for me what it was that you were saying there?
Yes, because this paragraph is dealing with the Historic District Grant Fund. And when you get down to line 6, it defines downtown Littleton as being much, much greater than the Main Street Historic District as it is currently defined. And I object to that.
I was just wondering, in our study session, was there discussion about, from the board, asking that we extend the boundaries and include in it that purpose of being able to do the facades and those kinds of grants? I'm just wondering, I know we're moving there, and I understand your clarification, but where are we at with that?
That's what Michael just said, that they're going to be, it's on their work plan to deal with that, with this, and the one on page 3 as well.
Okay.
Part of, just for clarification, we had, I believe it was a week or two ago on a study session, we had originally anticipated a joint study session, and then in discussion with the chair of HPB, they weren't ready to propose. They were going to finish up this last night, obviously, as they have, but he estimated another 3 months before they'd be prepared to come and discuss this with you. But they do have that list from the council direction.
Yeah, and Jim, if I can make sure I understand what you're looking to do, is that the facade grant fund would be used for those properties that have actually opted into the district, and a broader area of consideration for the district would be fine, but that the grant fund be
only for
constrained only for those that have opted in. So
I think that's the way it was originally thought of when we set it up.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other questions? Peggy?
I got quite a few. So, and some of them are pretty picky after all the big ones have been done. But clarify again for me, because I think I'm still not tracking. So I thought we had agreed, but you're now saying the board hasn't talked about it, to go from a couple blocks north of Main Street over to the south side of Church, to extend the Main Street boundary.
I don't recall the exact discussion during the study session, but I know the council provided direction to, there had discussion with the HPB board at that joint study session, and part of the takeaway from that was HPB would go work on that and bring back those recommendations to you. So those would...
So that's on hold right now, till they
Yes.
get to that. Okay,
Yep.
I just want to make sure I was hearing
they've
that.
got a full page of to-do lists, and I think a good chunk of that came from that study session.
Okay.
That is correct. They were asked to, Councilmember Taylor suggested the larger boundary, and I think that another council member even added a little larger to that, and that is a recommendation that they have on their
Okay, so that's, it's not been negated yet.
No,
so.
not at all.
Okay. I'm working from the copy of this that we received from Kirsten in June. So I will tell you section and the page I'm on, and then you can at least track it with section. I'm in section 1. At the bottom on the printout, it's line 41, contributing property, a site, structure, etc. I think we need a definition of site. I'm wondering, does site include a vacant lot? You know, I mean, is that one of the things included? We have had discussions, and I think a piece of vacant property was made historic that now the tavern sits on. So I'm wanting to make sure, and I'm looking at this, remembering I think 5 times since I've been on council, we've had things come before us that we had to apply code for. And so I'm wanting to make sure that things are clear if something comes before us, at least while I'm on council, so I know what I'm interpreting, you know, how to apply terms and so forth. Then in that paragraph that starts in the all caps, contributing property, and continues to the next page, talks about period of significance and possesses significant integrity to convey its history. But by the end of the paragraph, it says, yet retains sufficient building fabric to still be considered contributing. If they refer to the same thing, I would wish that it would just say retain sufficient integrity, because I think that's what I'm hearing there. And if I'm wrong, then we need to define more terms.
City Attorney.
Okay, so we spent for 4 years, we talked about contributing and non-contributing and did not have a definition for them, and that was always a concern of mine throughout the past, is we need to get some definition so everybody knows what we're talking about. So there was a lot of time over the past several years discussing what it was. Now we have a list in progress and a map, and so we're going to know, at least when it comes to the opt-in boundaries, what is contributing and non-contributing. If you want to get into choice of language, well, hang on one second, because some of this is staff that has developed these definitions, for instance, Andrea Mimna, and so I'm wondering about the best way to handle that sort of thing, because I'm probably not the best person to ask how they were developed.
And I would add that part of some of the items, the 2 items you brought up right now, the HPB board talked in some length last night about definition of integrity. Would a vacant lot qualify as a contributing property? And I think they felt, I mean, obviously they're recommending approval, and they felt comfortable with the language that was in here in the discussion with the staff.
No. So I think you're confusing the 2 things that I've mentioned. They're 2 separate things.
All right. No, I understand.
The issue of site is one thing.
Yep.
The issue of integrity and fabric, I'm thinking of in terms of a structure.
Mm-hmm. No, the 2 separate paragraphs the board talked about both last night, and was comfortable with the staff response that occurred last night and recommended approval of the ordinance this evening. So they went through that language, talked about whether or not a lot could be contributing and under what circumstances, and also talked about the integrity and when was a building, when did it maintain its integrity. So I'm just letting you know that your advisory board did discuss both of those items individually.
And can I add just one more thing?
Are they saying something different than in the word integrity and fabric?
No.
So why can't we use the same word? Whichever word we want, let's just use one word there. Because when you shift the word, it sounds like maybe you're thinking something slightly different on the second one than the first one.
I think it's 2 different things. I mean, the first one, the contributing property, the fabric of the building, has a lot to do with the facade and the fascia and so forth and so on. When you get to demolition, then I think you're talking more about structural integrity. I mean, the facade may still have a lot of fabric, historic fabric, but the integrity of the building to be demolished may be such that it doesn't make any sense to rehab it because it's too expensive and economically not viable. So, I mean, I kind of think this thing is, the way they've done it here is the right way to do it.
But what's sufficient integrity to convey its history? What does that mean then?
There was it is a discretionary, it is a subjective decision based upon the seated advisory board, and they acknowledge that that is if you have a building that has had facade replacement, at what point does it meet that definition? And it is a subjective. Historic preservation is a subjective world, and you are not going to be able to nail down a language that identifies, if they do 2/3 of the casement windows in a fashion and don't make that third, does it qualify? Because they talked about, as they were looking at the contributing and non-contributing properties, they went property by property. This was a separate discussion, and they talked about the level of improvements that had been made, and some of them just didn't have enough money, so did it qualify as meeting the integrity definition for it? And you've got to, I think you really do need to allow that flexibility for it. You're not going to get this definition fine-tuned.
Well, as an item of discussion on this, okay, if you think of the barn that was often in pictures of the Steamboat Springs in the foreground that was taken up into the hill, or the barn that was outside of as you entered the city of Telluride, as two examples of buildings that may have been historic, but were of such nature that they had deteriorated over time, so that they did not have that element of integrity that was present. Whereas fabric talks about the context of where it's at. And so I'll go out on a limb and mention that as a distinction, but those would be the ways I would understand some of this to be, and understand why it's different in one sentence or segment of the sentence than it is they're in two separate sentences. I understand why there's a different reference in the two sentences.
I'm still not getting it, but anyway, so in the line that starts the sentence, the last sentence, that starts, a contributing property may have experienced some degree of alteration. Now, the paragraph talking about contributing properties, and then it says a site, structure, or object. So a site, I'm not sure about how you alter a site if it's just a site with no structure or object on it and still have historic fabric or whatever. So it would seem to me, I suggest that sentence say a structure or object on a contributing property, blah, 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 blah. But that's kind of a fine point, but it seems to make more logic and easier to read, given that all this is challenging to read by its very nature. I mean, there's not an easy way. I've scribbled and scratched out scribbles, so let me make sure I'm not missing something that's not scratched out. Let's see. This is about 4 paragraphs above Section 2. So if you find Section 2 and back up to non-contributing property. Since we have a very nice, I think, generally definition of contributing property, why doesn't the non-contributing just be everything that isn't qualified as contributing? So that this might just read a site, structure, or non-contributing property, a site, structure, or object within a historic district which does not satisfy the definition of contributing property.
I think the reason behind that, and I'll have to go back and bring that back to you, is because there was that concept that something could be non-contributing and then converted into a contributing property.
And this was a specific that paragraph, or that definition rather, was a specific recommendation from the HPB board between their first discussion on this and their second.
Well, and I hear that. But they don't know what I was thinking, and maybe, just maybe, something they would have liked. I don't know. But that's why I was hoping we could meet jointly with them.
I would just remind the council that your advisory board is recommending approval on this.
I know that. I know that. I heard that. That still
Yeah.
doesn't mean I can't say something.
And Peggy, I think you can say whatever you like, but I think we also have to keep it in the context that the board has approved this unanimously, and the attorney has worked on this for over a year. So there are the legalities of this, and some of the wording in here is based on what we need to have in here for some legal reasons, too.
Okay.
So.
The one I just said I can live with, it just seems to me that one's more complicated than it needs to be. I'm still, all of mine, apart from that one probably, are in terms of when something comes before us. So if they approve this unanimously, and I still say, man, when I read that, and if something's coming before me, any one of the things they did in the last 5 years, would I really be comfortable interpreting? That's where I'm coming from. We took care of, I just have a question. If they've approved it, they've approved it, but it doesn't make logical sense. The paragraph just above section 4.
It starts with line 29 on page 3.
The Main Street Historic District, that one all in caps. This says the director, if I'm remembering, would decide about the opt-in, yet in section 6, it's the board itself that recommends to council. So it seems to me a little weird that the director would approve the opt-in, but then the board make recommendations to us. And I think I'm reading that connection right.
Okay, so Section 3, indeed, the intent is, this is one of the things where we tried to loosen the rules, and if someone wants to come in, it's just an automatic, and it doesn't come before council anymore. So that's why the directors are doing it now, Section 6. So that's entitled Procedures for Nomination of Historic Landmarks and Districts. That is talking about new districts, not opting into the Main Street District.
Okay, so I'm just still trying to track, but thank you. So we'll put that one aside. Oops. Let me make sure. What I learned after our last regular meeting was that although council said that grammatical things could be corrected without amendments, what Kirsten, our attorney, has said is if it's stuff that's in capitals that's being amended, yes, we can do that. But if it's stuff that's in the existing code, it would have to be amended publicly. So even little things, then I want to make sure that I didn't miss a couple that are errors. So give me a second.
Peggy, Councilmember Cole, if there are spelling errors in the prior code, we can take care of that now. If you just send those to me, if it's a typo or something.
But if it's in existing code, why couldn't we straighten out a simple little grammatical thing last time then?
I don't remember the issue there, but yeah, we can do that. Oh, I think last time you were asking for something that mirrored state law, maybe?
No.
But, okay, well, anyway,
Probably me.
I don't recall
I
the
just want to
situation.
know what I'm supposed to do on them, so.
If you have grammatical or punctuation, then I would suggest going offline with Kirsten. Kirsten, if there's no substantive issue on that, then you can deal with it.
Okay. So hopefully I'll remember. I'll try to bring these tomorrow when I see you. I I don't think I'm saying this in here. This is near the end of Section 6, right above Section 7 in D. Is there something that nominations for a historic landmark must include? Because it talks about a historic district.
Yes, landmarks are addressed in a separate section of the code. And I'll see if I can locate that quickly. You would think I'd have it memorized by now.
That's one of the reasons why I asked that it be part of the definition.
It's in here somewhere. So 467, Section 6, procedures for nomination of historic landmarks.
And, I mean, if there's something that needs to be there, fine, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't. I just was asking. And I think Jim mentioned this next one, but let me take a look. In Section 7, is there any need to include something, and maybe not, but it still seemed to me maybe, we've added something in the caps there, but do we need to add something about proposed historic landmarks?
So this section covers landmarks and historic districts, so what would you...
Well, that's why I think that line 33 ought to have historic landmark instead of historic district. And it would make a lot more sense.
Okay, well, I will take a look at that.
Yeah, so some PCs, I mean, I wasn't quite sure about the district, Jim, but I thought we needed the other. So, I mean, what we needed there. Thank you.
Mayor, your votes are up. We've got 3 yeses so far, so we just...
So Section 8, letter F. Section 8, letter F, owners of properties within the Main Street Historic District or designated historic landmarks, wouldn't we perhaps just want to say owners of properties within historic districts, or does it have to be limited? We can't include the Louthan Historic District in there?
Well, this is talking only about the Main Street District and no place else.
No, well, or of designated historic landmarks. But what I'm saying is there a reason to exclude, to not include the other district?
Well, if you look at expanding the boundaries, then a historic landmark would make sense because it could be a designated historic landmark within the boundaries. As it sits now, when it's talking about the Main Street Historic District being only Main Street, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would anticipate, if I may, Mayor, I would anticipate that as part of the expansion discussion, that you will probably end up with a recommendation from the board that will ultimately get to where Councilmember Cole is and say within the historic districts with the assumption that others will be there. Whether you want to make that amendment now would be up to you for it, because certainly if there's multiple districts that there are opportunities for other exemptions, but that is, again, part of the work that they're working on. So,
and this can be approved tonight and amended as needed.
I'm sure that when the recommendations come back, there will be some amendments on the existing code.
Okay.
But, similar to the design guidelines, they did not want to continue to wait on this.
Councilmember Cole?
Yeah, then in Section 10, and Jim pointed out the one problem that I also had seen, but it looks like the introductory paragraph or section of A in one part really is introducing a series of things, or that some of these others are introducing a series. So where there's a generalization, but then several other things that seem to be on the same level are really subsets in some way. So maybe could look at that. Maybe you all could look at that.
We've got that one on the list.
Thank you. Then, whoops, can't tell which section. This is section 10. Oh, whoopee, now to find it. Section 10, Part C.
Page 7, line 11.
Thank you. Criteria for certificate of historic appropriateness. Board shall issue a certificate of historic appropriateness for any proposed work. Then, a few lines down, it shifts to proposed development and uses that word twice. It would seem to me that probably work is the concept in both, but maybe not. So perhaps you could look at that too.
I'm sorry, it was line 32.
That's all right. Thank you.
But those are not to be changed.
We've made note of that one.
Then section E, criteria and standards and limitations, criteria, standards, and limitations for alterations of a historic landmark. Might we also need for alterations of a building, a structure in a historic district?
I don't think so, because that's what the other COA criteria applies to.
Okay.
So this is just for
there a heading
landmarks.
that deals just with the structures in a district?
This is just for landmarks.
No, but is there a set of criteria for structures?
Yes, that
and-
is
and
the
a
general
and-
criteria for COAs. And
Okay, I'm not quite following
That is
that
existing
logic.
code, Peggy.
Pardon?
That's existing code.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that
No, but a COA, is that what you said?
there's general COA criteria, and then there's specific criteria for landmarks, and that's not something that we ever found to be a problem in
Okay,
historic preservation
if
boards.
they
Not,
don't have problems with it,
no,
just...
they don't. It works.
Okay, and this is one in this section, so apart from what I just said, the board considerations, blah, 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 the board shall consider, then several of these items, B through K, really seem subordinate to one. So maybe looking at whether some of these are generalizations that others subordinate under, or what, because I was trying to read them as independent considerations, and then they seem to not all be on the same level of subordination. And I'll try and remember to, I'll star that page, I'll bring it in tomorrow.
But Peggy, that's all existing code, though. That's not amendments.
Except for the
No, but if we're trying to clean it up a little bit as
Well,
we go.
Peggy,
so.
we need to state the policy level on this, and so I would, those types of changes, if you want to take those offline with the attorney, the way that
We
this
can
is
do that.
structured,
Okay,
you can do
that's
that.
all
But
right.
let's
I'm
try to stay at the higher
I'm just
level on
trying
this.
not to get into the office and then discover that I should have first raised it here. So simplify life. And we've taken out the section on partial demolition. So so we don't need any criteria for partial demolition separate from definition?
Where are you?
In that whole same section 11, sorry.
Page 10, line 16.
Gotcha.
So demolition and partial demolition, as we've already discussed, are in the definitions, and then there's a whole section on what the criteria for demolition is.
Right, but then the whole section on partial demolition has been eliminated. So there isn't...
Page 11, line 11.
It's dealt with elsewhere.
So I guess it will help when we get it next time with all the deletes added in and, I mean, everything struck out in the whole thing to be, I don't know, unless somebody else sees my confusion with that. And I know that this sounds really, I mean, this really wonderful work, in spite of my comments, it's really wonderful work. But I'm looking now in section 13C at the bottom of that paragraph, the end of that paragraph. And I see that the factors listed here are not limited to the following, but I'm not sure that I adequately see in there if they're issues such as an owner absolutely could not afford to maintain a property in the right condition, then wants to demolish it. If you just absolutely can't afford to do anything except maybe, eat, so you can't maintain that, how is the person going to be forced somehow to do something?
That would be where they would seek an economic hardship variance, essentially.
Okay, thank you. It's just the criteria that are listed here for that don't...
That could be part of it.
Okay, thank you. And since it's been a while since we've had one of these, I'm in that same general section 13C, number 5. Is there a way that an owner easily knows whether a property is listed as historic?
It's on the...
I mean, they generally kind of know if it's a land in the
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Jerry?
Not a question, so to say. I work with some historical properties that I've remodeled or worked on managing that kind of stuff. I think, as I've read this is far more understandable than what Denver has. So I think this is a good document.
Don't tell Mayor Hancock next week, okay?
Well, there's a lot of stuff I could tell Mayor Hancock. That's with Denver stuff. But I think Littleton has done a good job with this. I think the Historic Preservation Board and our attorney has done a good job putting this together. It may not be a perfect document, but I think you've done a great job. Thank you.
Bruce?
Just to clarify then, when we see this again at the second reading, what will we see in front, what will be sent to us exactly? Will it be the entire ordinance? I mean, basically, are you going to do the codification work? Is that what we're asking you to do, or?
No, we have, so it'll be in a similar format with the changes that we can make based on when we go back and review all these notes that we have. But we have a codifier, we have a service that will do all that for us, so you won't see the end product until it's codified and put in the code.
And that's after we approve it.
But I think what Councilman Taylor was asking for was the rest of the historic code, correct?
Right, with the caps and the strikeouts so that we know particularly what we're having
Well,
done.
the rest won't be caps and strikeouts because there's no changes. You'll see the caps and strikeouts in this section, but what I understood
It will
was
just-
the request.
The body will include the entire
so that
document.
you can read the entire,
Okay,
entire
then
section.
just make references to what's here.
I'm sorry?
Incorporated.
Okay.
Yeah, the amendments, the code changes, as I said, are, that's all we gave you. We didn't give you, we don't typically give you the entire code if we're sending you a section of it.
Would it be possible, we have the Historic Preservation Code in just a book. Would it be possible to just give you that book and then this version, and then you can see it?
That's
right
what
next to
I
each
was
other?
looking at today. That's what makes it a little challenging to go back and forth trying to look at that.
Kirsten, I think it would be preferred to see the changes within the document.
Any other questions?
I just want to ask, when will this be coming back to us? I'm not in a big rush to get it done in 2 weeks, if that helps any.
And, the plan was 2 weeks. I think HPB would like to see their recommendations move forward. I mean, I would give you the design guidelines as an example. They spent some time talking to staff about getting it moving again.
Okay,
So,
before we this is a public
yes,
hearing, so
it's a 5 Tuesday. Thank you, Councilman Stallman.
this is a public hearing, so unless we need to open the hearing, and then we can close for discussion later. Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing, and if there's anybody who would like to come down and address this issue, please do so. Seeing no one, I need a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move to approve the ordinance amending portions of Title IV, Chapter 6 of the Historic Preservation Code on first reading and set second reading for 3 weeks, August 7th, and have a comment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council, any discussion?
Yes. Good document at the policy level. I believe most of the issues have been really clarified. I'll wait and hear some of the issues that may come up on second reading, but contributing versus non-contributing, understanding the process that we go through, who has responsibilities, how that gets taken care of, and there's some items that we know need to kind of be looked at around the grant fund applicants being specific within the historic district. I expect those can come back at least in the context of the second reading, and would like to see this move forward.
Any other comments? You ready to vote?
Motion passes unanimously.
We are adjourned.